Present today, and happy to have many other agencies represented behind us to talk about a few public safety issues that relate specifically to traffic safety. And the first thing I'll talk about is the street racing problems that we've seen in Minnesota and have been seen across the country. Last year in 2022, state troopers stopped almost 2,000 vehicles in an effort to address street racing on our roadways. This led to over 800 drivers being stopped for speeding, 167 drivers arrested, 66 of those being for impairment. State Patrol flight resources like the helicopter you see behind me have been absolutely critical in tackling this issue and will continue to be utilized as a valuable asset to address street racing. Pilots are able to safely track fleeing motorists from the sky, thereby reducing the risk of a fleeing vehicle causing a crash on the ground and allowing police officers, deputies, and troopers to discontinue the pursuit and yet still apprehend these dangerous drivers. In fact, our data shows that over 90% of the time when the helicopter or an airplane is overhead a pursuit, that driver ends up going to jail without the pursuit occurring on the road. While this is a traffic safety issue, we know that this illegal activity, street racing, is often intertwined with other crimes such as stolen vehicles, controlled substances, and illegal possession of firearms. In fact, it's much more than just a traffic stop when it comes to street racing. In many cases, prosecutors are filing felony-level charges against participants because of the extreme danger that street racing poses to everyone who is on or near the roadway. We want to specifically thank the Minneapolis City Attorney's Office and the Hennepin County Attorney's Office for their aggressive and tenacious charging of various offenses to combat these dangerous behaviors by holding drivers accountable for their intentional actions. Whether it is a promoter, a participant, or an attendee, all are complicit in this illegal activity and will be held accountable. This is not something we can do alone. This requires a collaborative effort between our law enforcement partners, flight resources, dispatchers, criminal analysts, and prosecutors to hold drivers accountable for their dangerous behaviors. Our collaborative street racing enforcement efforts will continue this year. They're underway right now, which will include heat patrols as well as our Project 2023 initiatives with the goal of making our roads safe for everyone this summer. When it comes to heat, the second program I'll talk about, this was created in February of 2022 to combat the excessive speed and criminal activity in areas around the metropolitan vicinity, and was extended to greater Minnesota shortly thereafter, and continues to be one of the primary ways that the State Patrol and our allied agencies are specifically combating the dangerous behavior on our roads by specifically focusing on speeding. In addition to troopers on the freeway, State Patrol uses our aviation support to ensure that drivers attempting to flee are located and later apprehended and held accountable. Heat started up again this year when the weather turned in April of 2023, and in just 1 month, troopers have stopped about 7,400 drivers and made over 3,500 speeding contacts. The rest examples just really very recently are a juvenile driving 94 miles an hour in a 65 zone on Highway 52 near Rochester, and a person pulled over for going 89 in a 70 zone who didn't have a driver's license that was valid and had an active warrant out of Winona County for a probation violation. Lastly, Project 2023 will continue this year. Troopers are going to work in teams focused around different areas across the state of Minnesota, the first one coming up with the fishing opener. This project is aimed to do some surge in traffic enforcement resources into areas of the state when we anticipate specific problems related to traffic enforcement, like the deluge of individuals who will be driving to northern Minnesota to take part in the fishing opener, which we hope is a safe and productive fishing opener. Lastly, we continue to see a lot of dangerous speeds on the roads. I don't have to tell anyone about this. If you drive on roads or use our roads or watch people who are on our roads, speeding continues to be a significant problem. In fact, this year, troopers have already stopped 318 vehicles in our state for traveling in excess of 100 miles an hour. A lot of what you just heard me say was about traffic enforcement and traffic stops. That's a primary part of the mission of the State Patrol. So is education. Opportunities like this allow us to educate and tell the motorists that we'll be out there. But our goal actually is not to make traffic stops. Our goal is to prevent the dangerous behaviors. And everything that we're doing is focusing on the 4 dangerous behaviors: speeding, lack of seatbelt use, impairment, and distraction. Our goal is that people obey the law, and we're thankful for the many Minnesotans who do obey the law when it comes to traffic safety and support the work of the Minnesota State Patrol and our partner agencies as they work very hard to make Minnesota roads safer. I think I'll turn it over to Deputy Chief Forrest from the Minneapolis Police Department, and then we'll stand for any questions that anyone might have. Sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Forrest, the Deputy Chief of the Minneapolis Police Department. I'd like to start out by thanking Colonel Langer, the Minnesota State Patrol, and the officers and deputies of the agencies that you see behind me for their partnership. Illegal street racing is a serious concern. These activities are reckless and unsafe for the participants, for spectators, and for the public. These events have created dangerous environments that have resulted in additional criminal activity, violent criminal activity. This is an issue that affects many different cities and jurisdictions, and one that requires a coordinated partnership and approach. The Minneapolis Police Department is committed to our partnership with the State Patrol to address illegal street racing and continue to improve on our enforcement successes. The numbers highlighted by the Colonel speak to these efforts and this collaborative partnership. Thank you.
Be happy to take any questions.
When it comes to the street racing, what are we seeing right now? Is this something that is it on the decline, or is it just as prevalent as it was a couple of years ago when it kind of exploded during the pandemic?
I think do you want me to repeat the question, Nicole?
Yeah.
So for those that might be streaming, the question is, are we seeing, I'm summarizing the question, are we seeing street racing increase or decrease over the course of the past couple of years? I think that the pent-up energy to engage in street racing is as palpable as it ever was, but some of the strategies that we've employed collectively amongst the law enforcement agencies and the prosecuting authorities have really worked to combat it. So not every Minnesotan might see this, but every single Friday and Saturday night and other nights, if we have information that street racing is going to be a problem, this group of agencies and others are combating that problem and are having some success with it. But we know full well that we have to keep the pressure up, because if we back off on that pressure, that problem will rise again, just like it has around the country.
And can you give a sense of like how quickly can the helicopter get up and get onto those things when they're occurring, when you hear from one of these agencies?
So it very much depends on the scenario, but if we're talking about a phone call to when they're in the air, it might be 10 to 15 minutes, but you should also know that they're often in the air already. So we've increased our flight hours over the past couple of years. We're flying now more than we ever have, and our goal is to be in the air when anybody needs that resource so we can immediately get there and try to provide assistance.
Can you explain more about what the helicopter does?
I can. So the helicopter is one of the airframes that we use for this work, but we have an airplane that we also use. And they have really sophisticated camera technology that has thermal imagery for nighttime viewing. And on top of the camera, they have a mapping overlay, so they can see every street address, every street in the state of Minnesota. They have great information to be able to relay to the officers on the ground. So if we have a pursuit that's going through the north part of the metro and it's entering the city of Fridley, for example, those pilots can get overhead of that pursuit. Once they do, the police officers disengage and we shift into a strategic mode, and the pilots are calling out locations, which then allows us to get law enforcement in position to successfully and safely apprehend the driver.
Last month, the Minnesota Court of Appeals they ruled that dangerous driving should be hardcore second degree riot. Is that going to help with combating illegal street racing?
Absolutely, and we're thankful for the prosecutors that have worked on that case relentlessly and the agencies that have provided information to try to bolster those cases. But I think the message is simple. If you are going to engage in the intentional action of street racing, taking over an intersection, causing mayhem, then you're going to be held accountable. And that accountability is not just maybe going to be a citation. You could find yourself going to jail for second-degree riot, which is exactly what one of those cases speaks to.
Prior to that, was it a challenge on the back end when it gets to the courts, because there isn't like a really strong street racing law, and you end up picking up the same people over and over?
So we have, the question is about if we have, I didn't repeat those questions, but I will this one again, if we have the laws that we need, I think is the summary of the question. So there are many laws on the books that can help us relate to street racing, from a simple speeding ticket up to careless driving, reckless driving. There's laws on the books if a vehicle crashes and hurts, kills, or otherwise injures someone. The second-degree riot is a different application of existing statute to behavior that is relatively new. So we haven't really seen, and I can only speak from my experience, the type of driving conduct that's related to some of the street racing that we've seen in Minnesota and across the country is not something we've seen before. And so the law is catching up, and we're thankful for the prosecutors and for that ruling that can help us hold those drivers accountable, because there's a very big difference between someone who's driving a little over the speed limit and maybe didn't realize it, and someone who's intending on driving at ridiculous speeds or intending on taking over an intersection and engaged in ridiculous conduct that hurts and kills people, as we've seen. Or a regular person can look at it and say, someone's going to get killed if we don't do something. So I think the application of those charges and the tenacity of the prosecutors has been helpful for us to help people think twice about engaging in that behavior.
What do you think caused this surge of illegal driving?
So what do we think caused the surge in illegal driving behavior? So I think over the course of my career, there's been cycles of things that are novelty factors for people in vehicles, from pickups with loud exhaust to window tint to motorcycles. And in the era that we're in right now, this street racing has become fashionable. And I think across the country, we've seen it turn into sport or turn it into opportunity for people to be social media influencers or to have street credibility. And frankly, it's a criminal enterprise too, in some cases. So I don't know exactly what's causing it, but right now there is a novelty factor, and we're standing here today to say our job is to take the novelty factor away, because our public roadways are not where that type of behavior can occur.
I have a question for Minneapolis Police Department. We were able to recover a couple fatal fatalities, a couple people who were killed watching these, we call them street races, but the burnouts of the intersections. Are you able to provide any update? Has anybody been arrested in either of those cases to your knowledge?
No, I'm not prepared to provide any updates to those cases currently, but it does underscore what I had spoken of before, that these types of activities, they're dangerous. They create environments that are dangerous, and bad things do happen at them, and which is why it's imperative that we work together as a partnership and in collaboration to address these.
What about the Kia boys and the stolen cars? I saw one yesterday getting chased in North Minneapolis. That turns into street racing away too, just as dangerous. So how are you combating all the stolen cars and the kids and all?
That's a multi-layered problem that's going on, and one that is slightly different than what we're dealing with illegal street racing. And as Chief O'Hare has spoken of before, there's a lot of issues underlying what's going on with Kia and Hyundai motor vehicle thefts, with juvenile criminality, and a lot of that we're trying to combat through many different aspects. A lot of it with education and getting people who own these affected models to understand the vulnerabilities and trying to take steps to ensure that their vehicles are not as vulnerable to theft by using things such as steering wheel immobilizers and other things like that, trying to work to get out the information so that they can obtain whatever updates that the motor vehicle manufacturers can provide to help make these vehicles not quite as vulnerable. That's a huge issue, and as the chief has pointed out in some data and statistics, our motor vehicle theft numbers have gone up significantly, and are directly related to this vulnerability of Kias and Hyundais. When it comes to offenders that are doing this, it really relies into working in partnership with the county attorney's office and working in partnership with other law enforcement agencies and sharing information and intelligence, because as we found out, much like illegal street racing, these type of activities don't constrain themselves just to one city or one jurisdiction. They tend to go all over the metro area.
You mentioned that the street racing you're seeing today is different from what you've seen before. What is it that's different about what you're seeing today as opposed to maybe a decade before?
I think that what we're seeing today is the application of some of these vehicles that are built for the drifting and the takeover of intersections. it's not as simple as two vehicles pull up to a stop sign, challenge each other, and just race for a quarter mile. I mean, we're seeing organized groups come together with the intention of causing problems and causing mayhem. So it's not just ad hoc, like two drivers making a bad decision in the moment of time and then hoping that there's not an adverse consequence. This is an organized effort by people who are promoting it and trying to encourage it to happen, meeting in certain locations, meeting in the next location, with the goal of creating mayhem on our roadways that is undoubtedly going to lead to injury and death more than it already has unless we get a handle on it.
Out of the 300 that you've arrested going over 100 miles an hour, any of those involved in racing at that time that they were pulled over?
Certainly some of them would be the 100 mile an hour or more traffic stops. Some of them are absolutely related to street racing, and many of them are not. We greatly appreciate the coverage that we'll get on this, because there's two messages that we have. If you're planning on engaging in street racing, we're looking for you. We're going to hold you accountable. And the other message is, if you want us to do something about street racing and support the work of those that are engaged in traffic safety, I think this is demonstration that we're doing it and having a positive impact. So appreciate the coverage today.
And if you guys want to see the helicopter, you can get shots of inside the helicopter up close.
Are you able to bring up the
That would be a question for Lieutenant.
That would be an interesting visual for us, whether we're seeing it live or if you have
Yeah.
a video you can send us.
We can get you B-roll video that we can provide so you can see exactly what I was trying to describe to your question. Yep, we'll get that out. Thank you. Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Yep, yep, absolutely.